License and registration. You hand it over. The officer looks back into your car and suddenly asks, "Mind if I take a quick look inside the vehicle?" You say no. Then comes the next question. "So, why are you nervous?" Now your heart starts racing. Cars are flying past you. The lights are flashing. Another officer walks up on the passenger side. And then you hear the sentence that changes everything. Well, now you're being detained. What just happened? Did the officer actually have reasonable suspicion? Were you legally required to answer questions? Did refusing consent somehow create suspicion? And most importantly, what can you say during a police stop that protects your rights without making the situation worse? Because one sentence can extend a stop, one careless answer can open the door to a search, and one moment of panic can turn a routine encounter into a criminal investigation. Here's the reality most drivers never hear. Police officers are trained to gather information during traffic stops. They're listening for contradictions, nervous explanations, admissions, consent, and anything they can use to justify extending the encounter. That does not mean every officer is acting improperly, but it does mean you need to understand the difference between a lawful detention and the fishing expedition. In this video, you're going to learn what reasonable suspicion actually means, the common mistakes people make during stops, the exact phrases you can use to protect yourself, and how to end the police encounter using facts instead of emotion. Because the goal is not to win on the roadside. The goal is to leave safely without giving away your rights. Let's start with the biggest mistake people make the moment the stop begins. People talk too much. An officer walks up and says, "Do you know why I stopped you today?" Most people immediately start explaining. "I'm sorry, I was late. I only had 2 beers. I wasn't looking at my phone. I'm coming from my friend's house." That is exactly how people accidentally give officers reasonable suspicion. Because now the officer is comparing your statements, your behavior, your smell, your movements, and your timeline. You are building the investigation for them. Instead, keep your responses short and calm. Provide required documents if your state requires it. Then, stop talking. If questioning starts moving beyond the traffic violation, one of the safest phrases you can use is, "Officer, am I being detained or am I free to go?" That question matters for a reason. It forces clarity. If the purpose of the stop is complete, the officer generally needs a lawful reason to continue detaining you. In many situations, they cannot extend the stop indefinitely just to look for unrelated crimes without additional facts creating reasonable suspicion. Now, notice what this phrase does not do. It does not insult the officer. It does not argue constitutional law on the roadside. It does not resist. It calmly asks whether the detention is legally continuing. That distinction matters. Now let's talk about another trap that catches people every day: nervous talking. An officer says, "Where are you headed? Whose car is this? Why are you sweating? Why are you avoiding eye contact?" People panic and start over-explaining. "I swear I didn't do anything. I'm just nervous around cops. My cousin borrowed the car last week. There's nothing illegal in here." The problem is, the more you talk, the more material gets added to the report. And once statements are written down, they can later be used to justify further detention. That's why one of the strongest tools you have is silence. Not rude silence, not aggressive silence, controlled silence. A calm response might sound like this: "I choose to remain silent." Simple, clear, respectful. And here's why that wording matters. You are not refusing lawful commands. You are not physically resisting. You are specifically invoking your constitutional right to remain silent. Because if you just stay quiet without clearly invoking the right, courts sometimes treat that differently depending on the situation. Now let's get into the issue that escalates traffic stops more than almost anything else: consent searches.
This is where many people accidentally give away protections they didn't even know they had. The officer asks, "You don't mind if I search the car, right?" A lot of drivers think saying no makes them look guilty, so they say things like, "I guess so. Go ahead. I have nothing to hide." That changes everything, because consent can remove the need for a warrant or probable cause in many situations. And once consent is given, challenging the search later becomes much harder. Instead, stay calm and say, "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." That sentence is powerful because it is clear and specific. Notice what it does not say. It does not physically block the officer. It does not argue. It does not raise your voice. It simply establishes that permission was not voluntarily given. Now, here's something important people misunderstand. Refusing consent does not automatically stop a search. If officers claim they have legal justification independent of your consent, they may still search. But your refusal can become critically important later, in court, because it preserves the fact that you never voluntarily agreed. Now let's talk about escalation. One of the fastest ways routine stops spiral out of control is sudden movement. Reaching under seats, digging through bags, opening compartments quickly. Even innocent movements can alarm officers during tense encounters. That's why you should keep your hands visible and narrate your movements calmly. "Officer, my registration is in the glove box. I'm reaching for my wallet. My phone is in my pocket." This lowers tension immediately. Remember, your roadside goal is safety and clarity, not emotional victory. And this leads to another mistake people make: trying to debate the officer during the stop. "I know my rights. You can't do that. This stop is illegal." Maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong, but the roadside is usually not where legal disputes get resolved. Courts resolve legal disputes. Body camera footage resolves disputes. Dash cams resolve disputes. Witnesses resolve disputes. The roadside is where emotions can turn dangerously quickly. So instead of arguing, document mentally, stay calm, stay nonviolent, stay controlled. And if the questioning intensifies or you believe you may be arrested, use another critical phrase: "I want to speak to a lawyer." That matters because once you clearly request legal counsel, officers generally must follow constitutional limitations regarding custodial interrogation. Again, wording matters. Not "maybe I need a lawyer," not "should I get an attorney." Be direct. "I want to speak to a lawyer." Now let's clear up one dangerous misconception. A lot of people online claim officers always need reasonable suspicion to ask questions. That is not entirely accurate. Police can ask voluntary questions during many encounters. The real legal issue is whether they can continue detaining you without lawful justification. That's why your focus should not be winning verbal battles. Your focus should be understanding when you are free to go, when you are legally detained, and when you are voluntarily giving information officers can use against you. And remember, laws vary by state, facts matter, and court rulings differ depending on the exact circumstances of the stop. This video is educational information, not personal legal advice. Now, here's the safest framework to remember during almost any police encounter. Stay calm. Keep your hands visible. Comply with lawful commands. Do not make sudden movements. Do not argue on the roadside. Do not volunteer unnecessary information. Do not consent to searches unless you choose to. Ask clearly, "Am I free to go or am I being detained?" If necessary, say, "I choose to remain silent." And if the situation becomes custodial or escalates towards arrest, "I want to speak to a lawyer." Those phrases work because they are calm, lawful, and clear. They protect rights without creating unnecessary confrontation. And that distinction can completely change how a stop ends. In the next video, we're breaking down one of the biggest police stop myths in America, whether refusing to answer, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" can actually be used against you in court.